nonsense. The third attack with variant Greek readings is uniform translation. Okay, this is another one of the tricks of the Alexandrian perverts, perversion people, and I don't mean sex perverts, you can pervert scripture as well, but they insist that a Greek or a Hebrew word must be translated the same way every time. That is a total lie. That's not a good way to translate anything, and there are no versions out there that translate the same word the same way every single time. Okay, unless it's like a proper name or something. The point is, they will use that and they will say, I'll give you a good example, Acts chapter 12 verse 4, probably the most popular of all of them. They say the Greek word Pascha must always be translated Passover. Total lie. The Greek word Pascha can be translated as Passover or Easter. And the translation of that word is dependent on the context in which it appears. Okay? These people, oh, you know, Easter is a false translation. Really? Let me ask you a question, you out there that believe that. What is the Greek word for Easter? And why is it that Greek Orthodox churches, when it comes time for Easter season, they talk about Pascha? They'll say it's Pascha Sunday. I mean, why are they saying that? Because their word for Easter is Pascha. It's not a mistranslation, but people will bring that up and they will use it, and it's just, I mean, it's been answered so many times, it's just sickening that people bring it up anymore. But the Alexandrian perverts will come along and they will use it on the new believer in the King James Bible, and they'll say, see, the King James Bible, while it's been good and you know, kind of there for the ignorant people for the last 400 years, it's no longer good today. You know, we've proved now with our modern scholarship that it's not actually accurate to the Greek text. That's how they'll lie to you. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And something else I want to just say, and that is, it never ceases to amuse me that you get these people on YouTube, men and women, whoever, and somehow now, because they have a Nestle's text or some kind of a lexicon or some computer program, they're now more intelligent and more qualified to translate Greek and Hebrew than 54 of the greatest scholars that ever lived that took 7 years to make the King James Bible. Do you see a problem with that? These great men that lived back in a time that knew nothing about pornography or methamphetamines or any of the other stuff that's out there today. I mean, vexing, you know, television, Hollywood, all the other rock and roll music and all this other garbage. And those men lived in a pure time back then. It wasn't sinless. They still had problems in 1604 to 1611. But their minds weren't defiled like ours are today. Not at all. I mean, the Bible talks about Lot being vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. From day to day, you know, he was being vexed. And it certainly is vexing to live today. But those men lived in a time of moral purity back then. You know? And they were brilliant. I mean, study the lives of the King James Bible translators. They were incredibly intelligent men. Okay? 54 of them. But yet some person comes along today, man or woman, and they go through their little university education, you know, for maybe 6 years, maybe 7 years, you know, and they have their little Greek text, and they're able to tell you the mistakes of the King James translators made. Yeah, right. Okay, attack number 2 that a new King James Bible believer will face is attacks on the men involved in the King James Bible translation. Okay, and one of the favorites of the Alexandrian perverts is that King James was a sodomite, or to use modern terms, which I don't agree with, is homosexual or gay. Okay, King James was not a sodomite. All right, that is ridiculous. And in fact, those attacks on King James were brought out 20 years after his death. Okay, the guy was married and he had 8 children. He was not a sodomite. And he also wrote against sodomy. And back then in 1611, if you were guilty of sodomy, they put you to death. Okay, it was instant execution. King James was not a sodomite by any means. And even if he was, which he wasn't, but even if he was, what does that have to do with the King James Bible? Nothing. King James didn't do anything but authorize the translation and offer his royal protection for the translators so that they could get the work done. Okay, it's just an absurd accusation. And by the way, let me just get this real quick here. If you want the whole story on it, you can get this book here, King James Unjustly Accused, by Stephen A. Costin Sr. There you go. Right there. It's been debunked time and time again, just like the Acts 12:4 thing, but they just keep on bringing the attacks out, the same old worn-out attacks, hoping that the new believer doesn't know how to answer them. So then they can destroy their faith in the King James Bible and get them to turn and say, well, I used to be King James only, but now I'm not. That's what they do. Okay, attack number 2 that you're going to get. They'll say Erasmus was a Catholic. So then this somehow destroys the text that underlies the King James Bible, the Textus Receptus, and thereby it taints the King James Bible, and the King James Bible is somehow now a Catholic translation. Just absolutely absurd, just ridiculous. Let me make a couple points here. Was Erasmus a Catholic? Yeah, he was. Oh no, then his text that he made up out of thin air must have been a Catholic text. Okay, first of all, Erasmus only compiled manuscripts and put them together to make a text. Okay, when they find Greek manuscripts, they aren't like this. They aren't whole manuscripts, whole copies of the New Testament. It's a page or a couple pages or maybe a book or a chapter or two. And Erasmus took Textus Receptus manuscripts and he put them together and made a Greek with Latin beside it text. And he made it a couple different editions. Okay? He didn't make it up out of thin air. He just compiled it. So, first of all, it's kind of ridiculous to say that his Catholic beliefs somehow made him part of it. Secondly, Erasmus was condemned basically as a heretic. He did not follow the teachings of Rome. In fact, he was quite critical of the Roman Catholic Church back then. Okay? And I even heard that he was buried in a Protestant seminary. They wouldn't even bury him in a Catholic church. The third point. Could you please show me one Catholic translation which comes from the Textus Receptus? If Erasmus was this great Catholic and he dedicated his text to the Pope and all this other stuff, which is true, why didn't the Catholic Church ever use it? Why isn't there the Douay-Rheims version using the text of Erasmus? They didn't. They used Jerome's Latin Vulgate. Okay, they used the corrupt Alexandrian text. That's what they use today. They use the Nessel's text. It's put out under the supervision of the Vatican. So, again, there's no argument there. And by the way, another thing here I want to make a point of, the translators of the King James Bible did not use Erasmus's text as the basis for their translation. So again, it's not even, they use Stephan's one text. It's not even an argument to say anything at all about Erasmus. Again, a very weak argument brought out by the new Alexandrian, new Bible version perverts. Basically, just another lie that these people put together. Okay, another thing that they'll say is that the King James translators had limited knowledge and resources to make their translation. Now we have, so many more manuscripts. Again, another lie. The King James translators had everything available to them that translators do today. If they found a couple more manuscripts, they don't say anything different than what was available back in 1610. or 1604 to 1611, 1610, the Douay-Rheims Bible came out, the Catholic translation, the Jesuit translation, and many of those readings appear in your modern versions. I have a video on that. You know, these readings were available in 1611 and they rejected them. They knew that they were corrupt. Okay, they don't have anything today that was not available back then in 1604 to 1611.